Hi there, I'm Claire and I'm the pastor of Newmarket Community Church. I wonder if you recognise where I am right now. Go ahead and comment in the chat if you do. I suspect we've got a few different names for this place coming up. My family knows it as Warren Hill. I think a lot of people call this place the Heath, or maybe some of you know it as the Gallops. Whatever you know it as, this is a really popular place to come for a walk in Newmarket and to enjoy the view over our town. I have to admit, normally I come here in the daylight, but it's wonderful to be here after dark and to see all of these lights. Perhaps you can make out in there the lights of some of the shops. And I imagine as I see those that, maybe there's people in those shops right now who are breathing a sigh of relief because they've finally managed to find a last-minute present for a loved one. Or maybe there's people in those shops who are just having that little moment of excitement because they're treating themselves to something that's going to bring them a little bit of joy in their evening. You might be able to see the lights of cafes or restaurants. And maybe in those there are families sitting down to eat a meal together. Perhaps they're celebrating for Christmas, or maybe it's another occasion, perhaps a birthday or an anniversary, or maybe just because they want the fun of eating out for a change. I can see car lights moving along the roads, and I wonder who's in those cars and where are they going? Are they on their way home at the end of a long day, exhausted and ready to just get through the door and crash out for the evening? Or perhaps they're on their way out to go and visit someone, to take a gift to somebody. I wonder if, as they're driving, are they in a rush to get there? Or are they perhaps enjoying the time and the peace, the break that it is as they travel from one place to the next, and they're taking their time? I think quite a lot of the lights we can see are lights from people's homes. I love seeing the lights in all of the windows and imagining the families inside all cosy together. Maybe it's people on their own watching TV, or maybe it's large family groups. Perhaps they're playing games, or I don't know, maybe they're arguing as they put up the Christmas tree. But each and every one of these lights in this last year, there's been times where it's felt like those lights have been dimmed, or perhaps those lights have even gone out in our lives. Just like we've perhaps felt isolated and cut off from the light this year, the shepherds too would have felt isolated up there on the hillside overlooking Bethlehem the night Jesus was born. Shepherds were the outcasts of society. They didn't live in the town, in homes with families. They lived out in the fields with the sheep, doing dirty work. They even worked on the Sabbath, which to that culture meant that they were really not to be mixed with. I can imagine the shepherds overlooking Bethlehem that night and seeing the lights. Perhaps as they looked out, they saw the lights from people's homes, and they knew that inside those homes there would be families gathering together for their meals. Or maybe they saw as a door was opened and someone perhaps stepped out with a lantern, went down the steps to the stairs bit where the animals would have been kept, feeding and watering their animals last thing at night. And then maybe they saw as the lantern was carried back up the stairs and back behind that closed door into the warmth and into the comfort of being together. Maybe they saw the lanterns of the travellers who were arriving in Bethlehem ready for the census. Maybe they even happened to see the lantern that Mary and Joseph might have carried as they arrived in Bethlehem. But Mary and Joseph would have felt isolated and cut off too. We're also familiar with the story of how Jesus was laid in a manger because there was no guest room available for them. It's actually very unlikely that there wasn't really room for them. You see, in the culture in Bethlehem at the time, it was an absolute expectation that you would welcome any guest into your home. People would have rooms, and if they didn't, they would give up their own beds to make space for guests. it's not that there wasn't enough room for Mary and Joseph, but rather that they would have been turned away from the doors of the homes because of the shame that people felt they'd brought on their family. You see, Mary was expecting this baby before she and Joseph were married. And at that time, that was seen as the ultimate shame. And so you can perhaps imagine, as Joseph arrived at the door of his family home with Mary expecting this baby, and the door was opened, and he would have been told, "No, I'm sorry, you can't come in. You have brought shame on us. You no longer belong with us." But maybe out of pity, out of care, they said, "You can, though, go downstairs into the room where we keep the animals. At least there you'll be warm and dry." Mary and Joseph were cut off, were isolated. The shepherds too, cut off and isolated. But it's with Mary and Joseph, cut off, that the light of the world is first seen, where Jesus is born. And it's to the shepherds, alone on the hillside, cut off from the rest of the town, that the news is first shared by those angels, that the light of the world is here. And that light that they're told about, that light that is born there with Mary and Joseph, shines so much brighter than any other light in the town. How come? What's so special about this light? Well, earlier we heard a reading from the book of Isaiah. For the people who knew that passage so well, they imagined this mighty warrior who was going to come and defeat the Romans, the oppression, the injustice, the darkness of the Roman Empire that ruled over them. They thought he was going to come and fight that battle and win back the nation for them. But you know, that battle could only be won temporarily. They might defeat the Romans, but it would only be a matter of time before the next injustice, the next oppression, the next darkness came. Whether that was another nation that ruled over them unfairly, or whether it was a worldwide pandemic. The battle that the Messiah, that Jesus came to fight, was a different one. It was a battle against the oppression, the injustice, the darkness in people's hearts. And that battle isn't won by fighting with swords. It's won by fighting with the one thing that defeats darkness: light. Jesus fought with the light of truth. He showed us the truth of how God intended for us to live. And this light of truth revealed just how dark our hearts actually were. He fought with the light of love. He showed us the truth of God's immeasurable love for us. In his words as he spoke of God's care for us, and in his power as he healed people. This light showed us that however much darkness is in our hearts, we are precious to God. His light still shines on us. And Jesus won the battle. He took his light, his life, into the very darkest place, into death. He took all the darkness of our world, all the darkness of every human heart, the darkness of all our failures, the darkness of all our fears, into the grave with him. What happens when you take a light into a dark place? It's no longer dark. Jesus is the light that cannot be extinguished. Even with all the darkness of the whole world placed upon him, he still had his light. His light did not go out, and he came back to life again. You know, as we look out at all of the lights that are in our lives, and we've been perhaps so aware this year that each one of those lights can seem dim at times, or perhaps can even feel like they've been extinguished. And if those lights are the only ones that we rely on, then we could very easily find ourselves in darkness. But as the angels said to the shepherds, good news, there is a light that will never go out, that will never leave us in darkness. But you know, the shepherds had a choice. They could have stayed there on the hillside and thought, oh, lovely, that's nice. But they chose to go down into the town and to meet the light of the world, to meet the baby Jesus. And we have a choice too. We can sit up on the hillside with a warm, cosy feeling, knowing that yes, somewhere out there, there is this light that never goes out. Or we can go and look for it. We can go and find that light for ourselves. We can understand that light and bring that light into our hearts. If you've got a candle with you now, perhaps you might like to light it at this point, and as you light it, invite the light of Jesus that never goes out into your home.